How's it going, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. Wow, okay, so today's review is on a movie that is very interesting to me, and it's directed by someone that I've never even heard of, but now I am a lot more curious to see what else they have in store. Today, we're going to be talking about a film called You Were Never Really Here. Based on the book of the same name by Jonathan Ames, You Were Never Really Here, directed by Lynne Ramsay, stars Joaquin Phoenix. The film follows a character named Joe who works as a man that saves little girls from sex trafficking. He's given the task to save the daughter of a politician and is told to save her by any means necessary, even if that means being brutal. What follows is displaying Joe's suffering from his childhood past and a disoriented reality as he struggles between issues such as loneliness and suicide. This film may not be on many people's radars because Lynne Ramsay is a director who releases films exclusively in the UK. Granted, she only has 4 films under her belt, but this film, along with a film called We Need to Talk About Kevin, those films only had limited releases in the US. But my god, I sure wish that she had more films to give because her films are very fascinating in the way they tell their story and the overall style. Based on this film and her other film We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is another well-done film of hers that I'm planning to talk about next week, she relies heavily on the method of showing and not telling, and I think that is one of the best methods in filmmaking. With the right actors and story, it can either make or break the film. With most movies today, they always rely heavily on giving the audience information on the story and characters by telling us, and most of the time it's told in the most basic and uninteresting way. And yes, exposition is really important for developing the whole story, characters, and setting for the movie. But there's other ways that it can be done, and they're a lot more effective, maybe through looking at the characters' expressions, looking at their mannerisms, taking a dive into their past through little flashback sequences, and so much more. The film I talked about on Tuesday, Force of Nature, is a prime example of how exposition shouldn't be done in your film. And in fact, it's so on the nose that it ends up playing out as ridiculous and it halts the story as a whole. In the film You Were Never Really Here, let's just say that Lynne Ramsay made a smart decision by casting Joaquin Phoenix and putting him in the role of this character. He's one of those actors that does a great job in showing us what kind of character he's playing simply through his actions, mannerisms, and facial expressions. Of course, Phoenix is playing another character heavily similar to his portrayal as Arthur Fleck in Joker, which is one of my favorites, by the way. But in this film that relies heavily on no dialogue for its 90-minute runtime, I gotta say that Lynne Ramsay did a great job in making Joaquin Phoenix portray a character that was suffering with a troubled past, and one that's practically a ticking time bomb. Right from the beginning of the movie, we get to see Joaquin Phoenix completing one of his jobs from saving another victim of sex trafficking. And during the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, you can already tell what Phoenix's character is going to be. You see that his character is a man that's suffering with suicidal thoughts, which is most likely due to his troubled childhood past that we see little flashbacks of. He's also living with his mother, just like he does in Joker, but they seem to have a very deep connection and bond over movies such as Psycho. Knowing what Phoenix's character is like, he even goes as far as to just casually play with a knife in his bed, and he even goes as far as to imitate the famous murder scene from Psycho on his own mom. I think that Ramsay did a great job in establishing Phoenix's character right from the get-go, and it's done so cleverly in this movie that you already pretty much know what you're going to be expecting from Joe throughout this movie. But because of the unpredictable nature of Joaquin Phoenix's acting, there's also that factor of unpredictability that comes into play. It managed to leave me sitting at the edge of my seat every second that I spent with him. In terms of the story for You Were Never Really Here, it's very reminiscent of Taxi Driver. Much like that film, we follow a mentally disturbed man with a similar situation who vents out his frustrations by committing violence only to help those that are in need. Much like Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, Joe ends up growing a connection with one of the sex trafficking victims he ends up saving, Nina. She helps to remind him that he's there to serve a purpose and that there's more to himself than committing suicide. She's also able to reinforce the idea that Phoenix is not alone in this world and that there's always going to be someone there that needs him. Through the flashback sequences, as well as watching Phoenix's incredible acting, I like how Ramsay was able to put us into the mind of Joe and allow us to see what exactly he's struggling with. It really made for some well-done emotional moments throughout this movie, and while I may not agree with the methods that Joe takes, I can still get behind him and understand his struggles. I mean, geez, first I was saying how I was behind Vito Corleone in The Godfather, and now I'm starting to say that I'm behind Joe in this movie. I promise I'm not a psychopath. Now, like I stated in the beginning of the video, You Were Never Really Here is one of those films that relies heavily on no dialogue. When thinking back on Phoenix's character, he probably only has about 15 to 20 lines of dialogue, and most of the runtime is filled with following his character and seeing his struggles. Of course, a similar scenario is done with Joker, but a lot of the dialogue and events taking place, as well as prior knowledge on the character, helped in developing Arthur Fleck in that movie. The movie has much less of that going on, but I think what makes the development a home run is the way that Lynne Ramsay incorporates the music in the background, the cinematography, which is really, really beautiful in this movie, and Ramsay's overall style. Each one of those elements helps us to understand what Joe's going through and what he may be thinking at that very moment. And there's also emotional scenes in this movie that don't require all the dramatic music and dramatic dialogue. Just a quiet scene with perfect acting and emotions, which doesn't make the movie have to tell you how to feel. There are some scenes in particular that I'm not going to be giving away that incorporate the music and dial it up a whole lot. But thanks to the cinematography in this film, it's able to create some beautiful looking shots, and it's still able to deliver the right emotions with no dialogue necessary. I really wish that more films today could follow in these footsteps of no dialogue, because it really makes for some well-crafted cinema. Nowadays, they seem more on the nose than ever, and it's really difficult to encounter a film that could utilize the no dialogue aspects to their full potential. So yeah, I gotta say that even though I knew nothing about Lynne Ramsay to begin with, I'm a lot more interested now to see what kind of projects she'll be delivering in the future. You Were Never Really Here definitely isn't going to be for everyone, but for someone that is really into films dealing with psychological themes and character studies, this film was right up my alley. Like I said, casting Joaquin Phoenix out of all people was probably the best choice that Ramsay could have made, especially for a character like this one. He's one of the best actors of our generation, and I don't think he will ever cease to amaze me. Him accompanied by the haunting music and style, as well as the well-crafted cinematography, really enhanced his performance. The story itself will leave you hanging at the edge of your seat, and comes with many twists and turns that you won't see coming. If you're like me and you enjoy films with a psychologically driven story, I think you're going to find yourself enjoying You Were Never Really Here. And even for those people that aren't really big fans of no dialogue, Joaquin Phoenix's acting, as well as the overall style of this film, is something to be admired, and I would definitely recommend it. Just know, however, that it's not afraid to have a violent scene once in a while if you can't handle that. So with all of these factors in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and give You Were Never Really Here 9 out of 10 ball peen hammers.
Cleary said you were brutal.
I can be.
So I'd like to know, what do you guys think of You Were Never Really Here? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you not care to watch it? I'd love to know in the comments below. And if you made it this far in the video, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for some more future movie content. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this review. Look forward to more very soon. And until the next one, you guys, I'll see you later.